Hello again, and yes, welcome back. Those that might have seen some videos I did recently will have noticed I've been looking at upgrading the power supply for my Linn Sondek LP12, and I decided on a particular power supply, the Heed Orbit 1, and I've since had it installed in my system. It's been in my system a little while now, but I wanted some time to be able to use it and to assess the differences then that I'm hearing with the Orbit 1 power supply in my system. Now a little bit of backtracking then as to the background behind this. Originally I've had this LP12 from new, and it's I can't exactly remember how many years, but I think it must be around about 32 years ago I bought it, and the power supply that was in it was the Valhalla power supply, which is built in, it was sitting inside the turntable, so it served me absolutely superbly well. And I've been thinking and contemplating this upgrade for a number of years, but you know, I've focused on other things in my system then, and also buying records as well, which is what I really enjoy doing. And so, you know, I thought, well, 32 years, maybe it's time to look at the Valhalla and to try and replace it. And I went for the option then of looking at an external power supply, and a power supply that could provide me with both 33 1/3 speeds and 45 RPM. So after a lot of deliberation, I settled on the Heed Orbit 1 power supply as the one that I decided that I wanted for my system. And yeah, I've had some experience of using Heed products, other Heed products, and have them in my system, and you know, been impressed with them. So I you know, I guessed I couldn't really audition the Orbit one, so which, you know, would have been ideal, but it's not always possible to audition components because there needs to be modifications done to the system to be able to do it. Anyway, I've gone for the Heed Orbit 1. It's since been installed. I had it installed. I was going to try and do it myself, but I had it installed by Analog Innovation, who are a company that makes sub-chassis for Linn Sondek LP12s, and basically that's where I took the turntable to have this installed, and the job was done brilliantly. So I've had it back. It's been in my system now for a while. That's it there. So basically the way it works is it's got a very small printed circuit board now inside the turntable. The Valhalla was a lot bigger, so this printed circuit is very, very small. There's a cable coming out of the back of the LP12, connects into the Heed Orbit 1, and the Heed Orbit 1 then has a switch. Then when I turn the switch on, the turntable spins. The switch is located at the back of the unit, but to regulate the speed there's a button at the front to do so. So at the moment it's running at 33 1/3, but I can also obviously run it at 45 RPM. So yes, differences. Well, you know, straight away the first thing I noticed was how silent everything was in the background. And there's a couple of things which are big surprises for me as well, which I've noticed, but definitely the silence in the background seemed a lot quieter. I've got the Heed I've got a Heed phono stage as well, I've got a power supply for the phono stage. So those units are here. There's the actual power supply for the phono stage, and there's the actual phono stage, which I keep away from other parts of the equipment. Now I've done a little bit of alteration as well to the layout of my system, and I may come back to that again in another video. But in terms of pitch stability, I just feel, and noticeably, that it's a lot more stable. So rhythmically, it seems to lend more of a rhythmical feel to the music. I definitely feel that sort of infectious toe tapping going on when I'm listening to music a lot more now. One particular observation I want to make, which I noticed with it, and I have asked on a forum as to why this is, but I've definitely noticed improved tracking ability of the cartridge. Now I've got 3 cartridges which I use. One is a Nagaoka MP11 Boron, quite an old cartridge but in fantastic condition. I also use an AT440 MLB and also a Denon DL110. Now I swapped basically when I tested the actual setup and what have you using test LPs, and I've got the Hi-Fi News test record where there's a few bands on there which actually test the tracking ability. And since having this installed, using all 3 different cartridges at different times in my system, they seem to be handling the tracking tests far better than before I had this installed. Now, it came to me as a bit of a surprise, but then thinking about the actual sort of the mechanics and how I've managed to be able to take the Valhalla out of the LP12 and it's no longer in there, asking as well on a forum as to why this would be beneficial to tracking ability. Well, the theory, and whether it's accurate, and maybe perhaps somebody may want to expand on it, I'll be happy to hear anybody's comments on it. But of course, when you think of it, the Valhalla that was inside the LP12, that it generates heat. The arm and cartridge, cantilever and stylus are very, very sensitive pieces of equipment, and they are susceptible to any sort of like interference, whether it's electrical interference, vibration and so forth. So taking that away from the system and moving the actual power supply into a unit which is no longer within the actual turntable may have actually created a much more stability then, so that the tracking ability of the stylus perhaps is a lot more confident. That's a thought anyway, but certainly, you know, a welcome and an expected benefit as far as I can see. But overall, I'm delighted with the outcome. Of course, I can play 45 RPMs, and I've got a number of singles which I bought many years ago, and I haven't played them for over 30 years. So I'm going to get round to cleaning those at some point and playing them on my system. But overall, from a musical perspective and listening to my records, which I've been very, very familiar with, then I am hearing there's a lot more silence in the background of the recordings. The unit and the music seems, I mean, from my experience, I have this way, and I have listened to some of the components in my system over the years, and they have this way of actually really deepening the soundstage, and that's something else I'm noticing with it, whether there's greater separation perhaps between the instruments, a more deeper soundstage, so sort of like from within the plane of the speakers to behind the speakers and so forth. But it certainly opened up a little bit more detail then in terms of placement of the actual musicians then on some recordings, and you're in a little bit more then from the actual recording itself. So that I think is also been a benefit of having installed this in my system. I mean, the Valhalla was fantastic. I mean, it lasts 32 years and still to continue to play as well as it did. Quite remarkable, really. But of course, you know, it's been a worthwhile upgrade, this, and for me, you know, it shows that perhaps certain upgrades can be done for what I consider to be a modest outlay, and benefits are certainly quite clear to my ears anyway. So yeah, that's all for now anyway. Do some other videos soon, I think. I've very, you know, more recently done a few little changes, simply just tidying up cables and so forth, and because and just moving speaker position, which is sometimes what I like to do as well in my system. I've got the scope in this room to be able to move things around every now and then, and just to have a little bit of fun with the system in a different kind of position then. So maybe I'll do some video on that quite soon. But for now, again, yeah, thanks again for watching the video. Bye bye.